The G20 summit of the 20 wealthiest nations and emerging powers is hosted by Saudi Arabia this year, but the country has repeatedly faced international criticism over human rights concerns. Well, ahead of the primarily online forum, members of the European Parliament urged Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and the President of the European Council Charles Michel to boycott the event.
Jamal Khashoggi, an outspoken critic of Saudi Arabia's government, murdered in a Saudi consulate. Blogger Raif Badawi publicly flogged and sentenced to 10 years in prison for allegedly insulting Islam. Activist Lujin al-Hatrol detained for seeking the right to drive. Those are just 3 examples of human rights violations in Saudi Arabia, the country hosting this year's G20 summit.
Since assuming the G20 presidency, the government of Saudi Arabia has been hard at work trying to rebrand its image. So there's a large global public relations campaign underway in order to encourage investment in the country. And yet behind these initiatives and reform, the reality on the ground is that there is a brutal crackdown being led by the Saudi authorities against its own nationals.
That's the reason why European lawmakers are taking a stand.
The EU cannot remain silent.
Last month, they passed a resolution calling on EU officials to downgrade their participation in the summit, even though it's only a virtual event. Mark Tarabella is spearheading the campaign.
We ask for the downgrading. Why? Because an empty seat is not a good policy. It would be better to send not a high delegation level, but a delegation who is able to deliver a message, a strong message toward the Saudi authorities.
The lawmakers also sent a personal letter to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Charles Michel. We asked the Commission for their response and were told the summit was too important not to attend.
We've been raising our concerns and we discussed further how to improve the human rights situation, the protection of human rights in the kingdom, and we will continue to pay utmost attention to this question.
EU officials say it's important to maintain dialogue and keep communication channels open. But human rights groups argue leaders must use this summit as an opportunity to ramp up the pressure on Riyadh and hold the country to account for human rights abuses. They demand that at least all the women's rights activists currently in jail should be released as soon as possible. After all, one of the themes of the G20 is women's empowerment.
Well, for more, let's ask Christian Blut, who specialises in international trade with the Bertelsmann Institute here in Germany. Christian, welcome. Saudi Arabia is hosting this weekend's G20 summit. The oil-wealthy kingdom, though, was recently and repeatedly accused of major human rights violations. Are they the right host?
Well, whether or not they are the right host, they're probably not. But what's actually important is that the international policy response to COVID has been lagging behind the challenge for quite some time now. And it's really important that the international community gets its act together and steps up the measures that are taken against the pandemic and its economic fallout. So I'd say it's very important to talk, even if this meeting is hosted by a somewhat unsavory host.
Christian, the summit starts, as you mentioned, as we hit a critical phase of the COVID-19 pandemic. All of these economies represented need the vaccine to bounce back. How much will competition for access to the vaccine be part of these discussions?
What's really important is that we find a strategy to distribute the vaccine worldwide. If we don't manage to do this, the COVID virus can come back from a remote corner of the world and will haunt us again. So it's really important that we find a way to coordinate the distribution of vaccines, that we do so effectively, and that the financing gap, which currently still persists, is closed. I guess there will probably an element of competition who gets it first, which will be unavoidable. But what's really important is that eventually everyone gets it.
Christian, from COVID to the great unknown of this forum this time around, this is likely Donald Trump's last appearance on the world stage as US president. What are the other nations expecting from the outgoing president?
Well, although this is a really important meeting, I think expectations are very low, and that has to do with Donald Trump. His America First approach has turned out to be extremely short-sighted. It hasn't served America well, and it hasn't served the international community well. When I said that the international policy response has really been lagging behind the challenge, what I meant is we should have acted much earlier than we have and offered debt relief to poor countries. Rich countries have thrown an enormous amount of money at combating COVID, and poor countries haven't been able to do that in the same degree. So Donald Trump will probably go down as a president that has hampered an effective response to this massive crisis. And everyone, I think, is waiting for Joe Biden to assume the presidency and to see more leadership from the United States in combating this crisis and others.
Christian Blut, Project Manager for the Bertelsmann Foundation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.